I believe I want to have people work for me the way I would work for me, rather than just how much time do I have to put in, investing their whole self. That's a level I call on fire at work. And so I went looking for companies and organizations who really have a reputation of creating the kind of culture that inspires people to work harder, to perform better, and to stay longer. Now, there's a whole bunch of surveys out there. Well, probably the most popular is Fortune's, top 100 best places to work. Of course, Glassdoor, Achievers International. There's a series of those that study companies, and they do the employee surveys, and they do blind surveys, and try to get people to respond. Do you like your job? Do you not like your job? And I went, first of all, to try to create a spreadsheet of which companies would I like to get to, and how do I get there? Because I didn't just want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to talk to a PR person in the organization. I wanted to get to the top guy. I wound up, for this particular book, I spent 3 years researching this book called On Fire at Work, How Great Companies Ignite Passion in Their People Without Burning Them Out. And I got a chance to talk to some pretty impressive people. People from the C-suite, most of them the CEO, the founder, the person who started the whole thing, from great companies like Marriott and Apple and Ben & Jerry's and the Container Store and BB&T and Quick Trip. And if you read the surveys, you'll see so many of these companies year in and year out developed a reputation in their particular industry as a place you want to work. If you're in that industry, that's the place you want to go. And I wanted to find out how. What are you doing? And if you think about the lists and we say, okay, yeah, there's definitely a list of things that the employer is supposed to do and the things that we want from the employee, there's really only one side of that equation that you have complete and total control over. Now, I didn't think that 3 years ago when I wrote Reviving Work Ethic, because it was all about that side. How do we develop those things, those core values? But now it's all about how can we be the kind of company that attracts the best people in our industry? And that's what I said. You attracts the best. People who are inspired. And then how do we keep them inspired so they continually bring their best? If the American dream is being an entrepreneur, what about developing an army of entrepreneurs? People who would work for us like they would work for themselves. And there are companies that are able to do that. Tonight, I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights. Tell you about some of the cool companies that I got a chance to study, and maybe share some practices with you, that is business leaders, owners, managers, community people. You can look and go, wow, can I try to do that? We're not all Google. We can't start people at $250,000 a year and put a petting zoo out in the backyard. But are there things that we can do in our businesses, regardless of the size, that will help do more than just engage them, but get that kind of on-fire performance? Only one side of the equation we can control. It's the things that we do control, which is the 7 pillars of a great workplace culture. Let's look at a few examples right here. The first one everyone wants to talk about all the time, compensation. USA Today does this study every year. I wind up reading it every year. It's like, what would you do if you won the lottery? They ask Americans. I guess they ask several thousand people. And you know what the number one answer is year in and year out? If you won the lottery, what's the very first thing you would do? Quit your job. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Imagine you won Powerball tonight, right? So, obviously, compensation is very important, but when you dig deeper into the topic of compensation, you find out that maybe we have it all wrong. I mean, when it comes to compensation, it comes out of the dictionary. It says for the 17th century Latin word, which is compensate, meaning to counterbalance one thing against another. So the definition itself is to provide something good as a balance against something that might be undesirable, or to give money or something in exchange for the dreaded evil, work. Right? So you think about compensation. That's the way most people look at compensation. I had a chance to work for a large franchise chain, and I trying to conceal the brand, but I went in it because they said our people aren't motivated. Can you come and help our franchise owners motivate their people? And so the first thing I do is pull out my little iPhone, and we go in and we start talking to people. And I wanted to find out if the people in this restaurant chain, if they felt like they were being fairly compensated. So it was a simple question. Do you feel like you're being paid fairly? Here's what we asked of this young gentleman whose name was Trevor. And I hope you can hear this over the speaker. But
today, definitely feel like I'm being paid fairly. It's pretty chill today.
Could you hear what he said? I'm being paid fairly today because it's pretty chill. Did you hear that word? Chill. I'm being paid fairly because it's chill. What's the translation? Chill. Slow. None of those pesky customers coming up and handing us money. It's chill when those customers are away. Then it's chill and I'm being paid fairly. Now imagine that's your sandwich store and your employee feels that way. You see, wage per hour tends to do that to people. It tends to say, I want to do as little as I can for as much as I can get. And we say, boo, but guess what? We as employers, we want to get as much as we can get for as low as we have to pay. Our goals and their goals become different. We put in odds. You have a guy like Trevor who just tells the truth. I like it when it's chill. I don't have to work very hard. Well, when is a day that you feel like you're not being paid fairly? Here's Trevor's response.
The day when I'm not getting paid fairly would be when all the way till close we have people just filing in. It's packed in here. I'm working like crazy.
Did you hear poor Trevor? Day I'm not being paid fairly is when the place is packed. Doggone it. All those stupid people wanting sandwiches. So it doesn't matter how much marketing, advertising, what they pay square footage on their lease rental, all these things, all the legal requirements, doesn't matter. Do you know what matters? 18 inches. The 18 inches between his nose and your nose. That's where it's going to determine whether you're going to come back to the sandwich chain. And you know what right now? Trevor doesn't want you in his restaurant. And it ain't just Trevor. That's the mindset of so many people who are being paid wage for, and it's so simple to figure out. How many hours did you work? How much do I pay you? Do some multiplication, subtract some taxes, boom, there's a paycheck. So how do we get past that? Well, first of all, look at minimum wage. Oh, minimum wage is going up, minimum wage. I get that. But here's the reality. Regardless of what minimum wage is, make it $25 an hour, I don't care. You will never get maximum service when you pay minimum wage. Because what happens is people start counterbalancing. They look and say, what is he being paid? What's he being paid? And if I'm getting as low as you can possibly pay me, down to the bottom line, regardless of what that is, I'm being cheated. Because nobody looks at themselves as minimum. So you want maximum after minimum wage, it doesn't work. One of the companies I researched here was this one. Have you heard of this place? The Container Store. There's several here in Colorado. Amazing place. Got to interview Melissa Reif, who's the president of the Container Store. Got a chance to talk to her, and she has this really interesting philosophy. The Container Store does. First of all, it's a retail job, and some people say, oh, a retail job. Oh, those suck. Do you realize the average floor salesperson at Container Store makes 50 grand a year? They have 250 hours worth of training before they ever set them loose on the store floor. Because their philosophy is quite simple. It's simply called 1 equals 3. They believe that 1 great employee equals 3 mediocre employees. You take 3 mediocre employees, and let's say we pay them, what is minimum wage now? I don't know, let's just say it's $8. So now all of a sudden I'm paying $24 an hour, and I got 3 mediocre employees. Container Store says give us 1 outstanding employee, and let's make them deliriously happy. Let's pay them twice as much as anybody else. Let's give them $16 an hour. Whoa, I get $16 an hour. That person is what? On fire. And now what do you have? You have 1 great person who's you're paying $16 an hour as opposed to spending $24 on minimum wage people. And so what does it translate to? I love going into the Container Store. Recently, my wife and I made a move. We need stuff to put stuff in, and that's what this place is all about. There's more kinds of things to put crap in. My dad owned a freight salvage store. There was 50,000 square foot warehouse of everything from cornflakes to submarine batteries. I moved more stuff, and now there's a Container Store. You could put that stuff in. I like the Container Store. I go in the Container Store up at the Flatirons Mall, and the young lady, right as I walk in the door, it's not just, oh, here's another customer. It's not that Trevor type of excuse. This young lady's name was Bonnie, and she was animated from the moment I walked in the door. She knew everything about the store. She was elated to be here, so much so we got to laughing so hard. Bonnie said, let's take a picture, and we did. I'm going to tell you, that's how happy she is to work there. And that's how happy I was just to interview her. It was incredible. Why? Because the Container Store isn't racing to the bottom. Another example, well, it's not just a minimum wage job. Let's look at another company. How about the Mars Company? Mars Company is headquartered in McLean, Virginia, about 20 minutes away from the Pentagon. And yet it's a privately held company, and people say it's easier to get secrets out of the Pentagon than it is out of the Mars Company. Now, Mars makes all kinds of confectionery candy. They recently bought Wrigley. It was a $32 billion exchange, which they simply wrote a check for, paid cash. It's a privately held company, and so people to get information on how they operate, 70,000 employees, $32 billion in sales every year, and I got a chance to talk to a guy who was the corporate legal representation for him. He had worked there for 9 years. He was number 5 in the entire company. And when I got the chance to talk to him, one of the things he told me, he said, you know, I'm number 5 in the company, and I have to punch in every day. When was the last time you punched a time card? Here this guy is. He said, I have to punch in every single day. But he says, I don't mind Because so does number 4, 3, 2, and 1. We don't ever ask anybody to do anything we're not going to do. Everybody punches in at the Mars Company. And here's the thing at the Mars Company. He says, here in McLean, Virginia, the workday starts at 8:30. But if you're here at 8:29 or before, you get 10%, a 10% bonus on the day that you're there. So think of that. Instead of, you're late, they reward the people who are early. And one of the most fascinating things I found out about the Mars Company is, he said every Thursday somebody comes up and hands him an envelope. Every Thursday, they put an envelope in his hand. You know what's in that envelope? His paycheck. See, because we've gotten away from what a paycheck looks like. See, some magic person just takes money from one account, puts it over here, and then our bills come out and we never really see it. And some of us just lost the reason we even work. We don't know. Compensation's so important to us. And I think we're getting compensated. It's over here. It's kind of invisible. At the Mars Company, they put a paycheck in your hand. It's an old school company with a different mindset and a way to engage employees. Incredible. Compensation. When you talk to young people, what do we think? Statistics prove, this was done by KPMG, they said, what do young employees want in the workplace? Well, look at the blue or purple, whatever that is what the managers think. They think millennials want high pay. But when millennials were interviewed, what they said what we really wanted was meaningful work. So when it comes to compensation, we want to work for a company that has meaning, and I studied a company that does just that. This is a company called DoSomething.org. It's in New York City. And you know what it is? It's a mission-driven company. It's a nonprofit. And yet they are able to attract top candidates off Stanford, Yale, MIT, because those kind of people want to work for a company that's changing the world. See, it's a social company. They just put on campaigns for teenagers. Right now, there's something like 300 to 400 different campaigns going on. Teenagers create an idea and put on a campaign. Maybe it's called Teens for Jeans, and they get old jeans and give them to homeless teenagers. Or maybe it's where they paint people's thumb red so they remember not to text while they drive. So teenagers come up with the concept. They go to DoSomething.org, they apply to DoSomething.org, and they put the muscle behind the campaign, and they do amazing things to change the world. Their philosophy is simple. We make the world suck less. The commitment of people who are aligned and have a value-driven ability, they want to change things. Isn't it great when people are aligned? One of my favorite companies, a franchise group out of Waco, Texas, is called the Dwyer Group. The Dwyer Group, you probably haven't heard of them before, but Dina Dwyer was actually one of the subjects of Undercover Boss, because the Dwyer Group has 11 different franchises under different brands, like the Appliance Doctor, Mr. Rooter, the Lawn Care Guys. Phenomenal chain. And the Dwyer Group is founded on a very simple principle. See, her father, Dina Dwyer's father, started the company on 4 simple values they call the Living Rich Principles, RICH. It's like responsibility and integrity and communications and having fun. 4 values. Now here's the deal. They believe in them so much they start every meeting, everybody recites the core values. In fact, it's written in the corporate bylaws. Anytime 2 or more people get together for anything, lunch, coffee, whatever, we start that meeting by reciting our core values. See, Roy Disney said years ago, decision-making is easy when values are in place. Imagine this. Imagine you're with your significant other, and maybe this is just me. I think about it all the time because my wife has these little pet names for me, like, you idiot, you moron. We get in these confrontations, and they get heated, and we try to decide, and she sees black, and I see white, and there is no gray. And we sit there, and sometimes it gets heated. And during one of these heated exchanges recently, I did the weirdest thing. I went and pulled out our marriage vows. Almost 20 years ago, we stood in front of God and all our friends and family, and we recited our marriage vows. And I said, I want to have this argument again, but before we do, let's read these. Oh, the conversation changes. The conversation changes. Do you see why the Dwyer Company is successful? See, when your values are in place and you look at each other and say, this is what we're all about. This is who and what we are. Now let's make the tough decisions. Great things happen. Talk about alignment. We want to talk about growth. I want to talk about this company right here, Wegmans. Now, if you're not from the Pacific Northeast, you probably never heard of Wegmans. Because Wegmans is a grocery store chain, right? That's a grocery store chain for kind of supermarket. But it looks like Walmart, the biggest Walmart you've ever been in, and the biggest Whole Foods had a baby. It's the most amazing place I've ever been into my life. They're phenomenal stores. But this grocery store chain has been listed in Fortune's top 100 places to work every year since the inception of the list. Since the inception 17 years ago. In fact, they've been in the top 20 every year. They've been in the top 10 years. Been in the top 5 years, and they've won it 3 years. A grocery store chain, the best place in America to work. All because of Danny Wegman and the foundation that they have. the way that they grow their people. Now, what was really phenomenal about Wegmans is everybody starts, they give them a bubble chart. And a bubble chart says, here you are, where do you want to be? They will not hire you unless you have aspirations beyond where you are. They're not hiring you to be a caddy. They're hiring you to be the next CEO of the company. You're on a trajectory, and they want to make sure you get there. Where do you want to be? You want to learn produce? Because we're going to start you here. To get there, there's these bubbles that you have to fill in. This is what's going to help you get there, and there's somebody constantly working with you to make sure that you're getting the skills so that you can move into that position. Move into that position. They hire a lot of young people, and they promote within. They do a fabulous job. Only company I've ever worked for said, I'd like to, before I do your company keynote address, I'd like to go in and talk to your employees. Can I do that? Well, Kirk, you're a lawyer. We got to sign some legal documentation. What questions are you going to ask them? Who are you going to talk to? We need to get to the bottom of this, right? No. Know what they said? Pick a store, go in, talk to anybody you want. Unbelievable. I went in with my little camera, and this is going to be hard to hear. This is going to be hard to hear, but I've tried to write some of their answers below. But listen to what these young people said when I asked about if they liked Wegmans.
Well, today I proved someone of alcohol, like an ABC check, and I won $10, and they gave me a balloon.
I learned from working at Wegmans, I learned organization is the key, communication is the key, and getting along with your co-workers and your employees is definitely key to success.
I love it. I love going to work every day. I love the people that I work with. It's just such a positive and great environment. I love it.
When my pictures are on the wall with two pictures, it just makes me smile, let me know that I'm doing something awesome. And I'm treating my customers with so much love and respect, which is great.
By the way, this young lady was living under a bridge. She was homeless when they hired her. It's amazing, the culture. Everybody starts somewhere, but everybody's on a trajectory. The responsibility is to grow people. I would say, are you growing your people? Do you know what their growth trajectory is? Let's talk about atmosphere for a moment. I could talk all day about EKS&H. For those of you that don't know those letters, it's an accounting firm. I didn't know much about them before I was hired to come in and speak to some of them, and I got a chance. When Scott Bemis was the president of the Denver Business Journal, the publisher of Denver Business, what title, president was it? Both. But president, CEO, grand poobah of the Denver Business Journal, he asked me to come in and do this presentation, and I got a chance to meet Bob Hopman, who's the H in EKS&H. And Bob said, hey, come down and take a look at our company. So I walk in the front door and I meet Judy. Now, Judy is a receptionist. And you know, receptionists, here today, gone tomorrow. Not so, because at EKS&H, Judy has been there 26 years and loves every day. You walk in the door, a smile that just warms you up. From the moment you walk in, you are completely, thoroughly, and totally engaged in the EKS&H process. You see people who genuinely love who and what they are and what they do, and they've won a number of awards. So I wrote a whole chapter based upon the experience I had with EKS&H, because you start defining it. My daughter Whitney's here. Where's Whitney? Whitney, are you here? Still here? Whitney? Maybe she went home. I know she wasn't feeling good. Whitney. Okay, she's not here. Whitney was a student at Seattle Pacific University, majoring in accounting. She worked at one of my buddies, interned over the summer at one of his accounting firms. 3 weeks later, quit. I don't want to do that. Why? Because all people do is stare at their computer screen. Now, had she interned at EKS&H, she'd probably be a partner now, because she would have gone, this place has an atmosphere that accepts people where they are, connects people to a community, lets people know it's not just work-life balance. As Bob Hopman puts it, it's work-life success. It's creating the two, melding in. We want to know you. We want to know the people around you and your family. We're going to have a good time here. They're constantly playing practical jokes. Judy laughs about, somebody put a Post-it note on the cappuccino machine, said, hey, it's voice activated, and just taking videos of people going up going, I want a latte. It just taking Bob Hopman's car, filling it with, opening the top, getting his key, opening the sunroof, filling it with those little peanut chips. And I was like, how is he supposed to get into his car? They do this stuff nonstop, even during tax season. It's an amazing firm. I talk about them. But I want to tell you about another atmosphere company. This is a company started by 3 guys who all lost their job as IT guys, nerds, right? And what they decided, they lost their job and they hated the companies they 3 worked for, and they started a company. And they started a company out with the idea, we can make a whole lot of money. They said, why don't we create the kind of company we would like to work for? And they founded this company called the Nerdery. Now, the Nerdery is headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It started 10 years ago. Now there's 500 nerds. And you talk about atmosphere. You go inside. I mean, just the company cafeteria alone, people are eating cereal. I mean, it's like fully stocked kitchens. You got all these nerds who really like to be there. Across from this, which I have on video that I'm going to release on Monday, they have 4 kegs on tap the entire day. 4 kegs on tap. They even have a brewmaster there. Tell me a nerd that doesn't want to work in that environment. And you know, it's a pet-friendly environment. Everybody now has a pet, and you got to bring your pet to work, right? Well, you get to do that at Nerdery. You walk up and it's like you're going to the Dumb Friends League. You're seeing all these animals everywhere. But fun, amazing, out in the parking lot. They got a full-size regulation hoop basketball tournaments. They're doing things after work like this fearless gaming tournament and something really cool. Their auditorium, they have this auditorium they call the Nerdatorium. And then the Nerdatorium, what people are doing constantly is having fun. So here's two guys playing Nerf Sword War right in there. But if you look at the Nerdery, there's more than 50 social clubs, and every single one of them was started by a nerd. It wasn't started by somebody saying, hey, we ought to do this. So regardless of what your interests are, look, they got things like Nerd Fit and yoga and Loose Leaf Club and gardening club and whatever the binary fiber arts club is. I don't know what that is. But, you know, fantasy football and running clubs, and everybody's going to find some place to plug in. So it's not just a place you want to work, it's a place you want to be all the time. You look at the Nerdery and you see people in the Nerdatorium on Fridays for a session they call Bottle Cap, where they bring people in with their heart and their soul, and they do amazing things to engage. Every nerd gets a chance to make presentations, people comment on them, they feedback, and all that kind of synergy creates this environment. Final thing I'd like to share about the Nerdery is very simple. Their values are on the wall, the biggest one of which is be humble, because there's a rule there. 500 nerds who are all the smartest kid in their class. Now, how do we make decisions? Based upon autonomy, the best idea wins. 4 guys get together, everybody puts out their thumb, we all share our idea, and we vote. And you know, whoever gets the most votes, that's the idea we're going to go with. Every single person who works at the Nerdery has a bracelet. And on the bracelet it says co-president. That's their title. Co-president, they want people to act as if they're presidents of the company. I'm running out of time. I got so much energy and excitement over these companies that I get a chance to study, and I don't want to delay you any further. All I'm going to do is say it's been such an honor to write this book. I do want to talk about communication real quickly here, because I invited a guy I interviewed for this book about communication. You might not think about it in terms of being a business leader, but I think what Frank DeAngelis did at Columbine High School during the tragedy was one of the most amazing jobs of leadership I've ever seen in my entire life. Frank, absolutely. Frank, thank you, Frank. Little known fact, when Frank was there, he made a commitment. See, there's a lot of these tragedies, when they take place, people want to bolt, they want to leave. So it's not just, what do we do when everything is great, but what happens when our whole world turns upside down? See, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the real leadership comes shining through. And what Frank was able to do was keep a staff intact through communication. Now, he was chided several times because people said, leaders, you're supposed to be strong. You're not supposed to cry. And Frank says, I'm strong with the ones that want to be strong, and I will cry with the ones that want to cry. But he kept his staff so much intact. Frank, you lost out of 149 staff. How many did you lose like after the first year? 3. Imagine that. Only 3 teachers bolt after year 1. And that's probably lower turnover than you would have lost if nothing would have ever happened. And then you committed to be the principal at that school all the way up through the kindergarten kids that were just going through the system and just retired a year or so ago and now is in private practice doing some consulting out there. But what an amazing job of leadership, all because of the communication, listening, talking, knowing who people were, communicating on a one-to-one basis. When it comes to communication, I can't give a better example than I can of Frank DeAngelis. So many great people that would give their time and energy to be here tonight to support this book launch. I'm really excited about it. It actually comes out next week. My friends from Tattered Cover are here tonight. You could be the first kid on your block to have a book. If you're interested, be happy to sign them for you. I want to thank Brian Watson and Kyle Henderson, who have got this amazing forum going on where people get together and share business ideas. I'm so glad and delighted to be here. Thank you so much for coming out. If I can answer any questions for you, I'd be happy to do it. God bless you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.